So as this is the first video you may see me doing following the WWE releases, I just want to say anybody that was involved in that, I hope you land on your feet, you're all super duper talented, and of course, it absolutely sucks. If somebody loses their job, that is terrible. There's no if, buts, or maybes. But the wrestling world still does roll on, which is why Impact Wrestling just had another episode of Impact Wrestling. They need to change their company name. And of course, they're building up to Rebellion, which is going down in a few weeks after having Hardcore Justice a few days ago. And I know we weren't able to up those downs for Hardcore Justice, but I do need to eat and I do need to sleep. But we are back on that train now, so my name is Simon Miller. Welcome to WhatCulture Wrestling. Let's take the finger of power and give the good bits an up and the bad bits a down. Impact started with a nice recap video for Jazz because she lost her match at Hardcore Justice, which means yes, she does have to retire. We also learned that we were going to have a Kenny Omega and Rich Swan press conference, and so far that feud on Impact has been absolutely brilliant, so I was pretty excited. As we know as well, heading into this pay-per-view, we are going to get TJP versus Josh Alexander versus Ace Austin for the X Division title, so in order to get you excited about that, here we had TJP versus Josh Alexander in a one-on-one, and it was very good. Started off with some basic mat wrestling, but both these guys are so good at it, it looked like they were actually kicking each other's ass. And then everything I just mentioned kind of tied in, because these two guys' feud has been going round the houses, and because of that, TJP had Josh Alexander well scouted, and Josh Alexander had TJP well scouted, so it's almost like they were using the Force, and they knew what move was going to come before it actually came. When they realised this too, all of a sudden it became power versus speed, or armbar versus ankle lock. I know those two things don't really collide with each other, but that is the way the match went. They traded and transitioned between so many moves towards the end as well, it was frankly ridiculous. It was like two swans just gliding over the water, but that made the finish even better because essentially, Josh Alexander caught TJP in his move, or in this case, the double undercut pile driver, gave him it, and because that's the maneuver he'd mastered, he got the 1, 2, 3. So I don't look at TJP and go, man, what a loser. I just think, oh, that one, he was able to grab you. You've got to do better next time. I would like more matches to end this way. It's nice and simple, and it always works. And another return video for Taylor Wilde. She is going to be popping up on Impact Wrestling soon. This is good. Karl Anderson defeated Crazy Steve next. And this was a little bit strange, because I thought that Decay yelled at the Good Brothers after they lost their tag team championships around about 42 years ago, but then I realised this may be my problem, because I watched so much wrestling, it now all blurs into one, so maybe it was last week, but the commentators did a good job in telling us why this was going down, and yeah, it was just a fine, good match. I think all of these matches we are getting with the Good Brothers at the moment too is just to double down on this idea that they're not goofing around anymore, making dick jokes, and they're getting super serious and they're getting super aggressive. Because do not forget, at Hardcore Justice, Gallows defeated Black Taurus. Not 100% sure on that one, but at least it's made these two, the #1 contenders, look like badasses. There's not really that much to say about this one, although I do want to point out that Crazy Steve probably deserves some kind of more focused feud soon, because he does have the chops, but he's also a professional wrestler. So when Gallows did anything outside of the ring, he was all distracted, because no professional wrestler can handle that, which allowed Karl Anderson to hit the spine buster, 1, 2, 3, and it's another victory for Gallows and Anderson, who, if you can believe it, are on a roll. And you can't argue that they need to look strong before their tag team title match against FinJuice, which of course is happening at Rebellion. We then had my favourite Swingers Palace skit that we've had so far. I know that's not much coming from me, because I've always said I'm not particularly high on them, but I was entertained, and if I'm entertained, I'm happy. Because Ace Austin, our X Division champion, was in the casino wanting to know what his odds were for Rebellion, and when he found out they kind of sucked, he was very upset. And then TJP walked in and he found out that he was basically the favourite, so he was all made up. When, and he appeared at Hardcore Justice 2, P.T. Williams arrived, and bless that man, he started to do the Scott Steiner Maths promo, which is never going to get old. How this ever found a life on its own, I don't know, but P.T. Williams had it down verbatim, and I was just enjoying it so much. I tell you, the joke will never die, and I don't even care. Violent by Design were then out, and surely we now have to consider them some of the highlights of Impact Wrestling. up. Willie Mack and Eddie Edwards walked to the ring to talk about the fact that they had lost at the weekend, but also that the only reason for this was because Violent by Design had attacked Tommy Dreamer before the match, so now they want some revenge and they want another fight. Eric Young and his crew then entered and said they had nothing to do with Dreamer, so there's your hook right there. And hilariously, Eddie Edwards didn't care about that at all. He was like, well, I know what I just said, but to be honest with you, I kind of just want to have a brawler scrap right now. So I think that we should do it, and we should do it with my friends, which is when James Storm and Chris Harris came out. Violent by Design then legged it as the good guys challenged the bad guys to a match at Rebellion, and here was my prediction at the time. It was going to be proven wrong before we get to the end of the show, but I always like to show you my workings out. I was all like, well, I bet Chris Harris was the man that attacked Tommy Dreamer, and he's going to join VBD. That is not what happened. Donna Bratz was then backstage trying to calm down Susan, because of course at the pay-per-view we saw the return of Su Yung and all that nutty stuff, when Scott D'Amore arrived and said, look, Jazz is going to retire later, she's got a whole ceremony, I don't want you two anywhere near it, you've already retired her, haven't you done enough? I mean, at the time I was like, well done Scott, you basically just gave them an invitation to interrupt, but I was wrong again. Not very good at this. I do really like Tenille Dashwood's character though. She's just so self-absorbed and so kind of ridiculous that when it was announced that she had a new talk show called It's All About Me and that she would be getting a host on to ask questions to her because it's all about me, I kind of just went, that's a really good idea. Gia Miller was on question duty, but before she could do much of anything, Tenille went, yes, I do think I'm going to win the Women's Championship at Rebellion, because I've never failed at anything in my life. Deanna Purrazzo has never beaten me, so of course, that's all going to happen again, and I will be the champion. And then she just walked off and refused to answer any more questions, so what a crappy talk show. How ludicrous is this? I liked it. It was then time for Jazz's retirement ceremony, and she came out and she cut a very nice promo, and before we were done here, the Impact roster had surrounded the ring and they were just clapping her away. I thought this was very nice, I thought this was very respectful. Jazz is probably underrated as far as her in-ring career goes, so for her to be given a proper send-off, well, not only is that 2 thumbs up, but is getting it up. But then from nowhere, halfway through, Fire and Flavor, our tag team champions, came out, and they were like, Jazz, you're an absolute piece of trash. When all of a sudden, by magic, we had a tag team match between those two, as well as Jazz and Jordynne Grace, even though everybody was in their street clothes. It also ended with Jazz pinning Kiera Hogan. I was like, oh man, no, don't do this. Don't give me a stipulation that I actually bought into and then flush it down the toilet. And I don't think we're doing this, but because it is professional wrestling, now I'm not 100% sure. Because after all of this, we did zoom to the back when Scott D'Amore was like, hey, I know what we should do. We should give you a real tag team title shot, Jordynne Grace and Jazz, and we'll do it at Rebellion. But Jazz, thankfully, said, no, I am a lady of my word. I don't want to do that, but I know who the perfect partner is. So we're gonna have to see what happens here. Like I say, a part of my tum-tum right here actually thinks it will be Jazz. I just don't like it when you go back up on stips, because the next time you do a stip, I'm like, well now, I don't believe the stip. However, we sit, we cross our arms, and we be patient. We then had a rematch between Brian Myers and Jake Something, and the justification for this was because it was a pick your poison, because Matt Cardona was allowed to pick Brian Myers' opponent, and later on, Brian Myers was going to be able to pick Matt Cardona's opponent. Now, I'm sure the reason that Impact thought they had to do this was because Myers had lost at the pay-per-view, so now they thought they had to give him something. I'm going to run these jokes into the ground. But given that Jake had won, and here he lost, I was a bit like, well, now you've just 50-50'd it, and you kind of ruined both. Down. It was also really short. I mean, I don't think it went more than a few minutes, and from nowhere, Myers just hit the final cut, and that was the 1, 2, 3. And look, they've won me round in terms of the Matt Cardona versus Brian Myers match at Rebellion. I'm very excited about it, but this just kind of felt we took Jake Something and tossed him out the window. I like Jake Something. You should do something with him. Someone's gonna shoot me. The follow-up match was much better though, because Brian Myers got right on a microphone and said, Matt Cardona, get out here right now. Here's your opponent. And it was Sami Callihan. And as Matt Cardona was stood at the top of the entranceway, had all that glitch stuff, Sami was there and he started to beat him up. Callihan then continued to beat Matt before the bell, but as soon as we got ding ding, Cardona ran at him, hit the radio silence, and got a near 2. And I was like, I don't think I've ever seen these two wrestlers fight before, which is always good. And this, well, it started with a bang. This honestly was really entertaining though. They were brawling on the outside, they were kicking each other's ass in the inside, and the only reason Sami Callihan won is because Matt Cardona was about to finish it with another radio silence when Sami grabbed the referee and used him as a shield. Cardona can't handle that. He's a wrestler. He was distracted, so Sami hit the pile driver and he got the 1, 2, 3. All my earlier predictions then died because Miguel came out to confront Sami Callihan, and Sami was like, look, you should give me more respect, you absolute peon. Do you know how you got in the main event of Hardcore Justice, which is what went down? I was the person that attacked Tommy Dreamer at the pay-per-view, and I did it for you, so for goodness sake, grow up and start giving me some praise. This sent Trey loopy, so he tried to beat up Sami Callihan, but that did not work, and Callihan basically left him lying after he hit him with an exploder. But all of this was truly very good professional wrestling. We had a good match, it then segued back into a feud, which I also think has been ticking my boxes. I was very pleased with all of this. Promo from FinJuice after this, because of course they are headed back to Impact Wrestling to defend those Impact Wrestling titles at Rebellion, and they have been enjoying how much the Good Brothers have been struggling, and they will continue that on when it comes to the show itself. I don't think that is going to happen. I presume Gallows and Anderson will win them back, but FinJuice aren't going to say that in their promo. That would be ridiculous. A press conference then ended Impact Wrestling, but it was different, and I've already made my opinions about different zone. Getting up. Scott D'Amore and Rich Swan were representing Impact, whereas Jerry Lynn and Tony Khan were representing AEW, because Kenny Omega and Don Callis, surprise, surprise, were nowhere to be seen. The main reason for this, though, was to make it very clear that we will 100% get a winner at Rebellion. There's not going to be any shenanigans. But also, whoever comes away with all the gold is going to have to make sure they do the duties on Impact. They're going to have to make sure they do the duties on AEW. They are going to be a fighting champion. That's exactly what I want. It's why you have to open the forbidden door. At this point, Omega and Callis stormed in like this was a perfectly normal thing to do, and they are just the most perfect asshats. You can hate them as soon as they arrive in the room. Because Don Callis pushed Josh Matthews away from the main microphone. He was like, Rich Swan, you're nothing. We don't even care about you. Kenny Omega is the best. And by the time Kenny Omega got on that microphone, he just cut the most scathing and the most insulting promo towards Rich Swan. Even I was looking at Rich going, get up and hit him. Get up and hit him. He deserves it. I think at one point Kenny was even saying his clothes were better than Rich's. He was aiming so low. And when he went to put his hand out to shake Rich Swan, Kenny Omega honestly did this. That's what the slap was like. It wasn't even a slap. It was like a love pat, but that was too much for Swan. He went nuts and a brawl broke out, and you could probably see that coming a mile away, but it was so well executed. I really do hope on Dynamite we start bigging this match up as well, because it deserves all the promotion possible, and I can't wait to see it, even if deep down in my loins, I can't see Rich Swan winning. But oh, how I tell you, I would enjoy being wrong. So this was a really good episode of Impact, because I think they're so focused on Rebellion, they know what they have to do, and they've hired Mauro Ranallo to call Rich Swan versus Kenny Omega. So it truly feels like their biggest pay-per-view in years, and at the moment they've got the TV to back it up. So overall, is getting it up. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about Impact and are you excited about Rebellion. Like the video, share the video and subscribe. Make sure you check out WhatCulture.com to keep up to date with the latest news and read yourself some articles. Follow us on social media and click a video around my head to stay on the channel. My name is Simon for WhatCulture. Thank you for watching me as always. I'll see you on the next one.